The morning sunlight streamed between the Boston skyscrapers, gently illuminating Rachel Walker's apartment. The clock showed 6 o'clock a.m., and she was already on her third cup of coffee, doing a final check of her research data. Which city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And hey, make sure you watch till the end. Something's going to happen that you won't see coming. Mom, is breakfast ready? Turning to the sleepy voice, she saw her son, Eli, standing in the hallway in his pajamas, hair still tousled from sleep. Rachel smiled and looked away from her computer. Good morning, sweetie. I'll make it right away. How about eggs and toast? 8-year-old Eli nodded silently. His blue eyes resembled his mother's, but his expressions and gestures all reminded her of her ex-husband, Daniel. Since their divorce 3 years ago, Rachel and Eli had been living life as a team of two. While toasting bread in the kitchen, Rachel was thinking about tonight. The team she led at Viridian Pharmaceuticals was in the final stages of developing a new drug for intractable diseases. Tonight was supposed to be an important night for data analysis. Listen, Eli, I have some very important work tonight, Rachel said as she placed the eggs and toast in front of him. Would you mind staying at Grandma Margaret's house? Eli, with his mouth full of toast, replied, That's fine. He liked Margaret's house. Daniel's mother, Margaret Walker, had continued to show the same affection for Rachel and Eli even after the divorce. Margaret's homemade cookies and the tree house in the backyard were Eli's favorites. Rachel sighed with relief. Her relationship with Margaret had remained strong after the divorce, and her presence was a real support for Rachel and Eli's life. The only cause for concern was Ashley, Margaret's daughter and Daniel's younger sister. After graduating from college, Ashley had drifted between several jobs and was currently unemployed, completely dependent on her mother. From the beginning of Rachel and Daniel's marriage, Ashley had always kept a cold distance from her brother's wife. That attitude hadn't changed after the divorce. If anything, it had gotten worse. Will Aunt Ashley be there? Eli suddenly asked. Rachel hesitated for a moment. Probably, but Grandma Margaret will be there too, so it'll be fine. In reality, Rachel wasn't overly concerned about Ashley's presence. Considering the importance of the research project, Ashley's cold attitude was a minor issue. At 5 o'clock p.m., Rachel returned home from the lab to pack Eli's things, then headed to Margaret's house. Located in a tidy suburban neighborhood, Margaret's home always had a warm, welcoming feel. Margaret opened the front door. With her short silver hair and soft demeanor, she welcomed them with a warm smile. Rachel, Eli, I'm so glad you came. Margaret embraced Eli warmly. This is such a help, Margaret, Rachel said, handing over Eli's bag. I'll pick him up in the morning. Ashley appeared from the living room. As usual, she stared at Rachel with an expressionless face. Hello, Ashley. Rachel greeted her calmly. Ashley gave a dry smile. Hello, Rachel. Work again? Is that more important than your son now? Ashley. Margaret scolded her. Rachel took a deep breath. Ashley's words were as toxic as ever. She always criticized Rachel's career, questioning her dedication as a mother. Sometimes she even implied that Rachel's work obsession had caused her divorce from Daniel. It's the final stage of a very important project, Rachel explained calmly. Eli is always my top priority. That's why I'm leaving him with someone I trust. Eli had already wandered out to the backyard to peek at the goldfish pond that Margaret maintained. His innocent curiosity lightened the tension in the room a bit. Don't worry. Margaret placed a comforting hand on Rachel's shoulder. I'll take care of Eli. Good luck with your research. After giving Eli a goodbye kiss, Rachel returned to her car. In her rearview mirror, she noticed Ashley standing at the window watching, but that unease slowly faded as her focus shifted to work. Rachel left the research facility at 7 o'clock a.m. after pulling an all-nighter analyzing the latest data. Her eyes were bloodshot, but her heart was full of pride. Her team's results were better than expected. Sitting in the driver's seat, she sent a quick message to Margaret before heading to pick up Eli. She arrived at Margaret's house at 7:45 a.m. Margaret opened the door with her usual warm smile, but something about her felt different today. Good morning, Rachel. Eli's already up, Margaret said a little too quickly. He's had breakfast, so you can take him home right away. Rachel stepped into the living room. Eli was sitting on the sofa watching TV. He didn't turn around when she walked in. Good morning, Eli. Mom's here, Rachel called cheerfully. Eli slowly raised his head. His usual energy and smile were gone. His face looked pale. The morning sunlight streamed between the Boston skyscrapers, gently illuminating Rachel Walker's apartment. The clock showed 6 a.m., and she was already on her third cup of coffee, doing a final check of her research data. "Mom, is breakfast ready?" Turning to the sleepy voice, she saw her son, Eli, standing in the hallway in his pajamas, hair still tousled from sleep. Rachel smiled and looked away from her computer. "Good morning, sweetie. I'll make it right away. How about eggs and toast?" 8-year-old Eli nodded silently. His blue eyes resembled his mother's, but his expressions and gestures all reminded her of her ex-husband, Daniel. Since their divorce 3 years ago, Rachel and Eli had been living life as a team of two. While toasting bread in the kitchen, Rachel was thinking about tonight. The team she led at Viridian Pharmaceuticals was in the final stages of developing a new drug for intractable diseases. Tonight was supposed to be an important night for data analysis. "Listen, Eli, I have some very important work tonight," Rachel said as she placed the eggs and toast in front of him. "Would you mind staying at Grandma Margaret's house?" Eli, with his mouth full of toast, replied, "That's fine." He liked Margaret's house. Daniel's mother, Margaret Walker, had continued to show the same affection for Rachel and Eli even after the divorce. Margaret's homemade cookies and the tree house in the backyard were Eli's favorites. Rachel sighed with relief. Her relationship with Margaret had remained strong after the divorce, and her presence was a real support for Rachel and Eli's life. The only cause for concern was Ashley, Margaret's daughter and Daniel's younger sister. After graduating from college, Ashley had drifted between several jobs and was currently unemployed, completely dependent on her mother. From the beginning of Rachel and Daniel's marriage, Ashley had always kept a cold distance from her brother's wife. That attitude hadn't changed after the divorce. If anything, it had gotten worse. "Will Aunt Ashley be there?" Eli suddenly asked. Rachel hesitated for a moment. "Probably, but Grandma Margaret will be there too, so it'll be fine." In reality, Rachel wasn't overly concerned about Ashley's presence. Considering the importance of the research project, Ashley's cold attitude was a minor issue. At 5 p.m., Rachel returned home from the lab to pack Eli's things, then headed to Margaret's house. Located in a tidy suburban neighborhood, Margaret's home always had a warm, welcoming feel. Margaret opened the front door. With her short silver hair and soft demeanor, she welcomed them with a warm smile. "Rachel, Eli, I'm so glad you came." Margaret embraced Eli warmly. "This is such a help, Margaret," Rachel said, handing over Eli's bag. "I'll pick him up in the morning." Ashley appeared from the living room. As usual, she stared at Rachel with an expressionless face. "Hello, Ashley." Rachel greeted her calmly. Ashley gave a dry smile. "Hello, Rachel. Work again? Is that more important than your son now?" "Ashley." Margaret scolded her. Rachel took a deep breath. Ashley's words were as toxic as ever. She always criticized Rachel's career, questioning her dedication as a mother. Sometimes she even implied that Rachel's work obsession had caused her divorce from Daniel. "It's the final stage of a very important project," Rachel explained calmly. "Eli is always my top priority. That's why I'm leaving him with someone I trust." Eli had already wandered out to the backyard to peek at the goldfish pond that Margaret maintained. His innocent curiosity lightened the tension in the room a bit. "Don't worry." Margaret placed a comforting hand on Rachel's shoulder. "I'll take care of Eli. Good luck with your research." After giving Eli a goodbye kiss, Rachel returned to her car. In her rearview mirror, she noticed Ashley standing at the window watching, but that unease slowly faded as her focus shifted to work. Rachel left the research facility at 7 a.m. after pulling an all-nighter analyzing the latest data. Her eyes were bloodshot, but her heart was full of pride. Her team's results were better than expected. Sitting in the driver's seat, she sent a quick message to Margaret before heading to pick up Eli. She arrived at Margaret's house at 7:45 a.m. Margaret opened the door with her usual warm smile, but something about her felt different today. "Good morning, Rachel." "Eli's already up," Margaret said a little too quickly. "He's had breakfast, so you can take him home right away." Rachel stepped into the living room. Eli was sitting on the sofa watching TV. He didn't turn around when she walked in. "Good morning, Eli. Mom's here," Rachel called cheerfully. Eli slowly raised his head. His usual energy and smile were gone. His face looked pale. "What's wrong? Are you feeling sick?" Rachel placed a hand on her son's forehead. He didn't feel feverish. I'm fine, Eli said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Ashley stepped into the room from the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee. Her face was cold as ever. Must have been tough, working all night, she said with sarcasm. Eli kept saying he wanted to see you last night. Rachel frowned. Eli? Did something happen? Eli just shook his head. It must be hard raising a child, Ashley continued, especially when you're too busy with work to be around. Ashley, that's enough, Margaret said firmly. Eli's just tired. He was up late last night. Rachel picked up Eli's bag and offered her hand to him. Let's go home, buddy. Once in the car, Rachel kept glancing at Eli through the rearview mirror. He sat silently, staring out the window. Usually, he'd be bubbling with stories about his time at Grandma's house. Eli, did you do anything fun at Grandma's? Rachel asked gently. Yes. His reply was monotone. What did you play? Watch anything? Silence. Rachel's heart sank. When they got home, Eli went straight to his room without saying a word. Rachel, now fully anxious, made herself a cup of coffee and sat quietly, trying to make sense of it. 10 minutes later, she knocked on Eli's door. He was sitting on the bed, staring blankly at the wall. His favorite action figures remained untouched. Eli, is there anything you want to talk about? She asked. Sitting beside him, Eli shook his head. Did something happen at Grandma's house? Did Aunt Ashley say something? Eli stayed quiet, his little shoulders trembling slightly. When Rachel tried to place her hand on his shoulder, he pulled away. My head hurts, Eli murmured. Since when? This morning. Rachel looked closely at his face. He looked pale. There were dark circles under his eyes. Why don't you lie down for a bit? I'll bring you some tea. Back in the kitchen while preparing herbal tea, Rachel's worry intensified. Something was seriously wrong. When she returned to Eli's room, he was lying on the bed, even paler than before. Eli, I feel sick, he whispered. The room is spinning. Rachel rushed to his side, setting the tea aside. Where does it hurt? Instead of answering, Eli suddenly sat up and vomited. The bed sheets were instantly soiled, and Rachel, panicked but still trying to support him, froze when she saw red streaks in the vomit. Blood, she gasped, her voice trembling. Eli. He shivered in her arms and then suddenly collapsed, completely limp. His eyes closed. His body went still. Eli. Rachel lightly tapped his cheek. Eli. Can you hear me? No response. With shaking hands, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. My son. He collapsed, he threw up, and there's blood, he's unconscious. She stammered. Her fingers trembled as she gave her address. In the longest few minutes of her life, Rachel held Eli close, whispering his name, willing him to stay awake. His breathing had turned shallow, and his face had gone ghostly pale. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics quickly placed Eli on a stretcher, fitted an oxygen mask, and began checking his vitals. How long has he had these symptoms? One of them asked. He said he wasn't feeling well this morning, Rachel said, barely holding it together. But he just collapsed a few minutes ago. Her voice cracked as she added, he stayed at my mother-in-law's house last night. Inside the ambulance, Rachel clutched Eli's small hand, her mind racing with a terrible mix of fear and suspicion. Eli had been fine before. Something had changed after his stay with Margaret and Ashley. Something wasn't right. At the hospital, Eli was rushed into the emergency room while Rachel was told to wait in the designated area. She collapsed into a plastic chair, covering her face, breathing hard, trying to keep from screaming. An hour passed. She went up to the reception desk several times to ask about Eli but was only told he's still being examined. Her mind couldn't stop replaying the horror of that morning, the blood and the vomit, the way Eli collapsed, and the eerie calm at Margaret's house. She tried to think like a scientist, like the pharmaceutical researcher she was trained to be, but her thoughts were swarmed by fear. Other families were seated in the same room, but Rachel barely noticed them. Her entire focus was locked on her son, who was now behind a closed door, surrounded by machines and strangers in scrubs. She considered calling Margaret but hesitated. That feeling in her gut wouldn't let her. Something about the morning just didn't feel right. Ashley's gaze had been colder than ever. Margaret had smiled, yes, but it didn't feel genuine. Just then, a voice cut through her spiral. Mrs. Walker? Rachel looked up to see a middle-aged man in a white coat standing in front of her. His name tag read Dr. Samuel Green. She scrambled to her feet. Is Eli okay? Is my son all right? Dr. Green's face was somber but composed. I need to speak with you, he said softly. This way, please. Rachel followed him down the hallway to a small consultation room. It was clinical and quiet, the walls lined with medical posters. She sat across from him, heart pounding. Eli's condition is currently stable, the doctor began, offering her a slight reassurance. He hasn't regained consciousness yet, but his breathing and heart rate are normal. Rachel let out a shaky breath. Relief washed over her, but it was only momentary. Dr. Green's face told her there was more. We ran emergency blood tests, he continued. We found abnormal substances in Eli's system. Rachel's stomach dropped. Abnormal? Like what? These aren't symptoms of a simple stomach bug or food poisoning, Dr. Green said. Specific toxic compounds were detected. Dangerous ones. Rachel pressed a hand to her mouth, struggling to stay upright. Toxins? What kind of toxins? What is your occupation, Mrs. Walker? The doctor asked gently. I'm a pharmaceutical researcher, she answered, her voice shaking. Why? The doctor nodded slightly. Then I'll be direct. We found benzodiazepines in Eli's blood. In addition, there's a synthetic compound we're still analyzing. These substances are usually only found in strong prescription drugs. Rachel felt her entire body go cold. Benzodiazepines? She repeated. Those are anti-anxiety meds. Sleeping pills. Yes, Dr. Green confirmed. But the dosage in Eli's system? This wasn't an accidental ingestion. His tone grew more serious. This amount could only have been administered deliberately. Someone gave him these substances intentionally. Rachel's had spun. Someone poisoned my son? The words didn't even sound real coming out of her mouth. Dr. Green leaned forward, his expression grave. Mrs. Walker, you need to contact the police. This could very well be a criminal act. Rachel could barely breathe. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the arm of the chair to steady herself. None of this made sense. Who would want to hurt Eli? This has to be a mistake, she whispered. No one in our family would do something like that. No one? Where was Eli last night? Dr. Green asked gently. He stayed with my mother-in-law, Rachel replied automatically. I was working all night. Her mind raced back through the last 24 hours. Ashley's glare, Margaret's awkward smile, Eli's silence, the sudden illness. The police have already been notified, Dr. Green added. They're on their way and would like to speak with you. Rachel shook her head. Her instincts fought back. No, not them, not my family. Dr. Green's tone was sympathetic, but steady. I know it's hard, but Eli's condition and these test results, they're not coincidental. Rachel wiped her eyes. Can I see him? Of course, Dr. Green said. He's still unconscious, but we've started detox protocols. We're doing everything we can. He helped her up and guided her to the ICU. Rachel's heart shattered when she saw her little boy lying in the hospital bed, pale and still, surrounded by machines. An oxygen mask covered his face. His fingers twitched slightly, and the rhythmic beeping of monitors echoed in the quiet room. She walked to his bedside, gently took his hand, and leaned close. Mom's here, baby, she whispered, her voice cracking. You're going to be okay, I promise. There was no response. Just the hum of machines and the soft shuffle of nurses outside the room. A nurse quietly entered and whispered, The police have arrived. Rachel kissed Eli's hand. I'll be right back, she said softly. 2 police officers stood waiting. In the hallway, one was an older man with a calm presence, and the other was a younger woman with a notepad in hand. The man stepped forward first. Mrs. Walker? He asked gently. His badge read Detective Alan Carter. Rachel nodded slowly. Yes. I'm Detective Carter, and this is Officer Madison Pierce. Would you mind speaking with us for a few minutes? Of course, Rachel said, her voice weak but steady. They led her to a small consultation room adjacent to the ICU. Rachel sat down, folding her trembling hands in her lap. I know this is incredibly difficult, Detective Carter began. We're here to help figure out what happened, but we'll need your full cooperation. Rachel nodded again. I'll tell you anything. Just, please help my son. Thank you, the younger officer Madison said gently, opening her notebook. Can you walk us through everything that happened from last night up until this morning? Rachel took a deep breath and started from the beginning. She explained her work commitment the night before, leaving Eli at her ex-mother-in-law Margaret's house, the way Ashley looked at her, the slightly strange behavior in the morning and how Eli suddenly collapsed just an hour after returning home. Both officers listened attentively, asking precise follow-ups now and then. How is your relationship with your mother-in-law and her daughter? Detective Carter asked. Rachel hesitated. Margaret and I have always gotten along, even after the divorce. She's been kind to both me and Eli, but Ashley, she's different. She's always been cold, even hostile. She doesn't approve of my work. She thinks I'm a bad mother because I have a career. There was a pause as the officers jotted down her words. I see, Detective Carter said calmly. We'll be visiting your mother-in-law's house shortly. We'd like to do a full investigation there. Rachel's chest tightened. She nodded in agreement. Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Walker. As they left the room, Rachel made her way back to the ICU. Eli hadn't moved. His chest rose and fell gently with each breath, machines quietly working to stabilize him. Rachel took his hand again and sat beside him. Her mind was flooded with memories: Eli's laughter, his drawings, his bedtime questions, and now, the horror of him lying motionless in a hospital bed. She was so lost in thought she barely noticed the hurried footsteps coming down the corridor. Turning, she saw Margaret approaching, face pale, eyes wide with fear. Rachel, what happened? I got a call from the hospital, she said, breathless. Rachel stood up. Eli collapsed. The doctors? They said he was poisoned. Margaret froze. Poisoned? That can't be. They found drugs in his blood, not something a child would get by accident. Margaret's face drained of color. Why? Who would? Rachel's eyes didn't leave her. She watched every flinch, every expression. The police will be arriving at your house, she said firmly. They're going to investigate, of course. I'll cooperate fully, Margaret said, shaken. But what in my house could have? Just then, a new voice interrupted. What's going on? It was Ashley, approaching from down the hall, looking nervous and annoyed. Her voice was sharp, but there was a flicker of panic beneath it. Eli was poisoned, Rachel said plainly. Ashley blinked. You're joking. Who would do something like that? That's what the police are investigating, Rachel replied, watching her closely. A flash of unease crossed Ashley's face. The police? She repeated, her voice rising. But that's before she could finish. Detective Carter and Officer Pierce returned, walking down the hallway. Are you Margaret Walker? Carter asked. Margaret nodded. Yes, I am. And you must be Ashley Walker? Ashley gave a curt nod. That's right. We have some questions for both of you. We'd also like to begin an official investigation of your home. Margaret immediately agreed, but Ashley shifted uncomfortably. I have plans right now, she muttered. This is an important investigation, Detective Carter said, politely but firmly. We'll try to keep it brief. Ashley didn't argue, but her hesitation was clear. Rachel watched them walk away with the officers, her heart pounding. When she returned to Eli's room, he was still unconscious, but Dr. Green informed her that the detox treatment was beginning to take effect. Several hours passed before her phone rang. It was Detective Carter. Mrs. Walker, we've made some progress, he said, his voice careful. Rachel gripped the phone tightly. What did you find? During the search of your mother-in-law's home, we discovered a stash of suspicious medications in a guest room drawer. But more concerning, in Ashley's room we found a notebook. Rachel's breath caught. What kind of notebook? It contains troubling entries, ones that suggest a deep resentment toward both you and Eli, he explained. We're still reviewing the full contents, but Ashley is currently being questioned. Rachel's mind swirled. A notebook? Resentment? Could Ashley really have? She paced for a few minutes, her emotions boiling beneath the surface. Then she remembered something critical. Her knowledge, her expertise. She wasn't just a mother. She was a pharmaceutical researcher. And right now, she might be the only one who could piece everything together. Rachel sat down at a hospital computer, her fingers shaking as they hovered above the keyboard. She had spent her career developing and analyzing complex chemical compounds. If there was anyone who could decode what had been done to Eli, it was her. She requested access to Eli's blood test reports and cross-referenced the components listed with experimental compounds she had recently worked on. After hours of intense focus and multiple comparisons, Rachel's eyes widened. She highlighted a specific combination of substances found in Eli's bloodstream, benzodiazepines, and a secondary synthetic compound, a unique molecule currently in preclinical development at Viridian Pharmaceuticals. A cold realization struck her. She gathered her findings, organized the data, and returned to Dr. Green's office with a printed document in hand. Dr. Green, she began, trying to steady her voice, this mixture. It matches a test formulation we've been developing in-house at my lab. It's not even public yet. No one should know about this. Dr. Green quickly read through her notes, his expression turning serious. This is very specific. You're saying this exact compound is being developed where you work? Rachel nodded. Yes, it's part of a sleep aid we've been testing. It's not even out of the trial phase. Dr. Green's face turned grim. This changes things. We need to notify the authorities right away. Over the next few hours, the picture became clearer. The police, Dr. Green, and Rachel worked in tandem, using her research to trace the origin and purpose of the synthetic drugs found in Eli's system. Late that afternoon, Detective Carter returned to the hospital. His expression was grave. Mrs. Walker, we've uncovered critical evidence. Rachel's heart thudded. What is it? We reviewed surveillance footage from your mother-in-law's home. She had outdoor cameras installed for security. Rachel inhaled sharply. And Detective Carter didn't sugarcoat it. The footage shows Ashley placing something into Eli's food the night he stayed there. Rachel collapsed into the nearest chair. She poisoned him? There's more, Carter continued. We searched her laptop. There are emails and notes indicating she was gathering information about your company. Confidential research data. Rachel's jaw tightened. She was trying to steal from us. Possibly. Her motives appear complex, part personal, part financial. She hasn't confessed, but it seems she may have wanted to benefit from the patent your research would generate. Rachel shook her head in disbelief. She would have let Eli die. Just to ruin me? Just to take credit? Detective Carter hesitated. That's not all. According to her notebook, Ashley had also been planning ways to undermine your relationship with Margaret to push you out of the family and the inheritance. Rachel's mouth went dry. The betrayal went deeper than she imagined. She was trying to hurt me, professionally, emotionally, and through my son. Yes, Carter said quietly. It appears this was deliberate, calculated, and incredibly dangerous. Rachel looked down, hands clenched in her lap. She had no idea how far this would go. And for what? Envy? Pride? Carter's expression softened. She's currently in custody and will face multiple charges, including attempted murder and chemical endangerment of a minor. Later that evening, Rachel was back at Eli's bedside when his fingers twitched, then slowly. His eyes fluttered open. Mom, he whispered, voice raspy but alive. Rachel leaned in, her heart catching in her throat. I'm here, baby. You're okay. Tears flowed freely as she kissed his forehead. You're safe now. The next few days passed slowly, but Eli's strength steadily returned. On the fourth day, Margaret visited the hospital. Her face looked older, more tired. Rachel? Eli, she said tearfully, standing at the doorway. Rachel stood to greet her. I'm so sorry, Margaret said, voice shaking. I didn't see it. I didn't think. She was capable. Rachel took her hand. It's not your fault, she said gently. Ashley made her own decisions. Margaret sat beside the bed and looked at Eli with sad eyes. I failed her. I failed you both. I never imagined she'd do something so vile. Rachel squeezed her hand. We're still here. We're healing. Margaret nodded silently, wiping her tears. The trauma was real, but something stronger was growing in its place, a deeper bond. One forged not by blood alone, but by truth, loyalty, and love. Outside the hospital room, a police vehicle waited. Ashley, now handcuffed, was being led away. Her head was bowed. She didn't look back. Rachel glanced at her through the window just for a moment and then turned back to Eli. From this point on, she promised herself, it would only be about healing. 6 months later, spring sunlight streamed into Rachel and Eli's home. Their lives, once shaken by trauma, had slowly begun to settle into a rhythm of healing. Through the living room window, the small trees in their backyard swayed gently in the wind. New growth was everywhere outside and within. Mom, look. Eli came running into the room with a fresh drawing clutched in his hands. It showed 3 smiling figures holding hands under a bright sun. It's me, you, and Grandma Margaret, he said proudly. Rachel smiled as she took the drawing. That's beautiful, sweetheart. From the kitchen, Margaret peeked out. Snacks are ready. Since the incident, Margaret had begun spending most weekends at their home. The bond between them had only grown stronger. What they'd experienced had changed them, but it had also stitched them closer together. They were family not because they had to be, but because they chose to be. The front page of the local newspaper sat on the table nearby. The headline read, "Woman sentenced to 15 years in poisoning case involving nephew." Rachel folded the paper closed. Ashley had shown no remorse during the trial. She had remained cold, distant, and defensive through every testimony. The court had convicted her of attempted murder and use of experimental toxins on a minor. Despite the overwhelming evidence including her notes, the tampered food, and her computer's search history, Ashley had never admitted to anything beyond saying she was always overlooked. Rachel had visited her once in prison not to forgive her, but to look her in the eye and ask the question that had haunted her for months, why? In the visitation room, Ashley had looked pale, exhausted, and bitterly empty. "I was always second," she had muttered, her voice hollow. "Everyone saw you as perfect, the successful one, the one with a career, a child, even mom's love. And I had nothing." Rachel had simply looked at her for a long time, the silence heavy between them. "Eli has recovered," she finally said. "You hurt him, but you didn't destroy him. Just remember that." She had walked away without another word. Back in the present, Rachel gently set Eli's drawing on the refrigerator with a magnet. The house felt warm, safe again. "Mom, can we go to the park this weekend?" Eli asked, munching on a cookie. "Of course," Rachel said. "Grandma, will you come too?" he asked brightly. Margaret looked touched. "I'd love to." Tears shimmered faintly in her eyes. Though the wound of losing her daughter still lingered, her relationship with Rachel and Eli had become something deeper, more meaningful. Rachel turned to Margaret. "I've also been meaning to talk to you about a new project at the lab." Margaret looked surprised. "Me? But I don't know anything about pharmaceuticals." Rachel smiled softly. "You don't need to. I need your wisdom and perspective, not formulas." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you, Rachel. Family isn't just about blood," Rachel replied. "It's about showing up for each other, trusting one another, and growing together." Outside, the sun began to dip, casting a purple hue across the sky. Eli sat between the two women, his small world once again safe, full of warmth and love. Rachel stroked his hair gently and exhaled deeply. They had made it through hell, but they were still standing. Outside the window, the evening sky began to turn a soft purple. Rachel sat between Margaret and Eli in the cozy living room, the faint hum of life around them a gentle reminder of how far they'd come. Cookie crumbs dusted Eli's shirt, and his bright laughter filled the air. They had made it through the darkest moments, but they were still standing. Tragedy had not divided them but rather united them. True family bonds, Rachel now understood, from the bottom of her heart, consisted not just of blood, but of the courage to walk together and the determination to protect one another.